Welcome to the webinar, our Thoughts on Thursday topic. Today is Leadership in Challenging Times. And this is your host for the next hour, Bob Hayward. In the background, we have Walter Blackburn and Jim Heatherton as other panelists to support this session, and they will also be involved in the Q&A. In today's session, we are going to deliver at least 3 crisis management strategies, at least 2 leadership solution strategies, along with 1 significant approach to strengthen your own team through your leadership skills. And at the end of this webinar, there is a significant free extra. My favorite quote of all time comes from an Australian Aboriginal lady. I'm really sorry that I don't know the lady's name. It wasn't recorded. But the words she gave inspire me. If you've come here to help me, you can go home. If you see my struggle as part of your own survival, then perhaps we could work together. And what that means to me today is that I'm not right. I am not sitting on my ivory tower with all the problems of this COVID crisis solved. Yeah, I am a business owner of 2 businesses, and I'm fighting to keep them profitable and growing and thriving and struggling with it at this time, just as many of you probably are. I have clients who are fighting to stay alive. Some of them are making significant progress. They've found some opportunities. Some of them are struggling because they're not yet found those ways through. So I'm not just here for the next 45 minutes or an hour. I'm here to be with you during the struggle after the day, to fight with you if that's something that you would like. And that's not a sales pitch, that's from my heart to your heart. If you want to connect with me or one or the other in the team, then we're more than happy to do so. We've got to get through this together. On the chat, let me know how many have heard of General Bill Slim. Some yeses and some no's. I don't know him. No. Murray has. Well done. So he's not well known. I hadn't heard of him until recently either. I was introduced to him by a lawyer, Derek Pidale of Woodstock Law in Oxfordshire, and I shall forever be grateful for Derek. General Bill Slim did not favour an awful lot of publicity. He wasn't one of the political elite, but Field Marshal Montgomery, who probably most of us have heard about and read about in our history books, said he was the finest general that World War II produced. And we're probably not going to get a greater accolade than from Field Marshal Montgomery. His self-depreciating memoir, General Bill Slim's book, From Defeat to Victory, is now a mandatory reading assignment to all UK soldiers on a military leadership course. And having delved into this book and into this man's character and trials and successes, I think he should be mandatory reading on all business leadership training and coaching programs. My recommendation to you is to read this guy's book, From Defeat to Victory. It has so much to give us in terms of leadership generally, as well as leadership in a crisis. What did Bill get involved in? Why was he so good? Well, Bill Slim was thrown into a forgotten war during World War II. Brief history, I promise you. He turned a badly mauled 14 British Army who were getting beaten badly in Burma into a formidable fighting force. When he took command, the 14th Army was in the longest retreat in British military history. They were being chased back by the Japanese out of Burma, 900 miles through intense Burmese jungle. It took them 100 days and 100 nights fighting their way from tree to tree. He turned a disorderly panic into a controlled military withdrawal and subsequently stopped the Japanese army advancing into India, which was their real goal. He then refreshed that army, went on the offensive and defeated a much larger force. And he did all of that with intense problems, including a shoestring budget, because Burma was the least of Britain's concerns. The priority was the war in Europe. One of his most significant strategies was to work out the smallest number of problems he had to solve in order to have the biggest impact on the situation. Right then he had a crisis. Right now we have a crisis. His first step was to work this out. What few things did he really have to tackle in order to have the greatest positive impact? And we can all do exactly the same. Part of this crisis and part of crisis management is identifying the real small number of problems we really have to tackle and the real small number of root causes. We cannot do everything. Get over it. We cannot control everything. Get over it. We cannot solve every problem. We have to find, I would recommend passionately, that we find the vital few things that we can actually do something about and will make a significant difference. In a sense, we're applying the Pareto principle. Now, there was a gentleman in Italy, well, we think he was a gentleman, but he was definitely in Italy, Wilfredo Pareto, who discovered the 80-20 rule. 20% of our products produce 80% of our sales in the good time. 20% of our salespeople produce 80% of the business. 20% of our customers give us 80% of our business. 20% of our directors give us 80% of our headaches. 20% of our staff go off sick 80% of the time. There is a small number of causative factors which produce the largest volume of the negative impact, and therefore we have to find them because those are the ones we can tackle. Is yours cash flow? Is it lack of products? So you can't get them. You'd be able to sell them if you could get them, but you can't get them. Is it the motivation of your team? Is it poor Wi-Fi? Where would we be without Wi-Fi at the moment? Has your market dried up? Have your customers shut down? We have to identify the problems and the causative factors, and the fewest that we can concentrate on, the better. We have to get facts sorted. We have to be very careful. We can be a very productive, paranoid person if we look for empirical evidence. This is not the time for knee-jerk reactions. The people that get through difficult situations are not the ones that rely solely upon instinct. All the case studies, all the textbooks, all my own experience, all the experience of clients I work with, is that where they do the research and find the empirical data on both what the problems are and what the solutions might be, then we have a significant chance of making a difference. Do you have the cash flow to see this through? What is your go broke date? What is the date by which, if no more money come in, that you'd have to turn the lights out? Think of that worst case scenario and start to analyze exactly how much room you've got to maneuver, exactly how many customers have closed. Let's not take the assumption. We know taking assumptions makes a bottom out of you and me. So let's do the research. Is it actually everybody? Probably not. Okay, are there some parts of the market open and some parts not? Let's take a look at it. Are all staff demotivated? Are they all struggling? Probably not. We could do a survey on home working and find out just how well some are coping and which ones are struggling. Then we can do something about it. Those that handle a crisis best do it with empirical data. They don't ignore their instincts, but they back it up with significant research. Of course, when you plan and prepare before a storm comes, then that can have a huge impact on whether you survive that storm. It's vital in terms of risk management, even now, that we consider what we need to plan and prepare for, what we need to do before some parts of this storm hit us. Because what we do now will put us in a stronger or weaker position later. Some of the real negatives of this crisis have not yet hit. I'm sorry to be the motivational force today. There is still time to prepare. There are more businesses that fold on the way out of a recession than do on the way in. Now is the time to do some risk management. Now is the time to think, okay, what's the worst case? What is the absolute worst case? It's a very important question. General Bill Slim did exactly that. Now, what was the worst that could happen? That the 14th Army get pushed out of Burma? No. The worst case was that the Japanese got a foothold in India. Then we really would have been in trouble. That was the worst case. He had to find a way not only to cope with withdrawing down the tracks of Burma through the trees, he had to find a way to improve, turn that ragged running army into a controlled military operation. And he had to find a way to prevent the worst happening. And we can do exactly the same. Part of it is to reduce the number of variables and control the controllables. In a crisis, it matters. Can we reduce the number of variables? Can you actually sell less of your range, 20-80 rule, 20% of your products produce 80% of your revenue, which means you need less cash, and actually you might be able to sell more. Sometimes selling less means we sell more. Giving customers less options sometimes makes a difference. Can you focus on a narrower group of customers and prospects? Can you furlough some staff and get the others focused and motivated? Could you reduce some planned future expenditure? Don't cut the muscle out of your business, but maybe there was some stuff you were planning to do, a new HR system, a new computer system, a new ERM, a new widget, a new set of vehicles. Can we actually take some of those variations out of the picture for a while? Control the controllables. Stop worrying about things that we can't influence or we can't control. Put your focus elsewhere. This came up in a real personal story just a few days ago. My youngest daughter works in the NHS, normally in theatres. She's now in ITU. She's looking after COVID patients. They've got PPE, but they run out of scrubs, which are the clothes they wear, the linen clothes that they wear underneath the scrubs. And the hospital said to the staff, sorry guys, you've got to bring in your own clothes. We've run out of scrubs. And my daughter rang in a panic and we started to worry. Well, that was a silly thing to do. What we needed to do was try and find an answer. We found an answer. The private hospital up the road is not as busy, even though they're doing NHS surgery to save the cancer surgery patients getting a risk of catching the COVID virus. But they had spare scrubs. Quite why the chief exec didn't think of that, I don't know. I'll deal with that later. But we delivered 50, my wife delivered, bless her, 50 pairs of scrubs to the hospital to get them through the weekend. There is no point worrying. Control the controllables, reduce the variables. General Slim decided he had three major problems. He had a problem with supply. He couldn't get bullets, food, or communication down the track. 900 miles through a jungle didn't work. He had health problems. They had malaria. Half his force was sick. Morale was on the floor because they were being beaten up by this enemy. Strangely similar to our situation today. We have potential supply problems. We certainly may have some cash flow problems, which is a supply. We may have health issues. Staff actually may be off sick, or they're afraid of getting sick, so they're not coming into work. Maybe we've got to reduce the number of people on site, social distancing to keep us going. Maybe we've got to work from home to protect everybody's health, but health is having an impact. Morale, it's hard to keep your morale up when you're on your own. And people in isolation, their mental health changes, the dynamics change. So it can be a struggle to induct new staff, for instance. It can be a struggle to keep people busy. And if people are not busy, then they start to lose their motivation. Of course, being at home all the time has its own implications, some of them positive and some of them not. So we have to work out our smallest number of problems that we can work on, that we can influence, that we can try and solve, that will produce the biggest positive impact in the future. Go to the polls now. Which 3 of the crisis management strategies we've mentioned so far do you consider the most important to you personally? Here's the first poll. Your answers are anonymous, so please join in. Which 3? Multiple choice. %40 voted. 60% voted. %80 voted. So it's looking like we have some leading contenders there. Work on the smallest number of problems, reduce the number of variables, and get to your empirical evidence. So thank you very much for those answers. Here we can see the outright winner is work on the smallest number of problems, followed reasonably closely by reduce the variables, as well as seeking evidence and working out some stuff you can do before the worst of the storm comes. So thank you for your contributions. My little mouse clicker doesn't seem to want to move slides for a minute. There we go. Okay. So supply was a big issue for Bill. He had 900 miles to get through, all of it jungle. No M1, no M25, no railway. It took 100 days to get from one end to the other. Getting food, getting communication, getting bullets, getting new people, getting the sick out was a horrendous problem. He identified that. So what did he do? He developed a leadership team. He started to get small groups of people to work collaboratively and creatively on problem solving. He got experts in logistics in a small number of people. You want 3 or 4 or 5, maybe 7 at the most. Avoid throwing large numbers of people or loads of extra resources at a problem. It can slow everything down. He put people in distinct teams. He clarified their leadership roles. He clarified their goals. He narrowed their focus. He put a magnifying glass on the most important problems. just like we would to catch a leaf or a piece of paper light. We focused that energy. He also looked to protect all of his forces. He didn't want the HQ to be overrun. He didn't want the front line to be overrun. He didn't want the cooks to be overrun. So he trained everybody in every weapon. Every soldier, whether they were a cook or a bottle washer or a lorry driver or the most senior officer, could fire every weapon by the time he'd got a hold of them. We need to think about bringing together teams and equipping the teams. Make sure you're training your people 3 deep in every major job. Everyone can do sales. Every soldier fires every weapon. Everyone can do customer service. Every soldier fires every weapon. Every one of us can do some of the key operational roles. If somebody gets ill, somebody else has got to fill in. And these different strategy teams solving different problems for Bill started to make a difference. We have to leverage our network. We have to leverage our team. We have to bring everybody's knowledge and intuition and creativity and skill together to find a disruptive solution. Yes, we've got to use a robust problem-solving process. We've got to have a disciplined approach. Creativity without discipline is worthless. Innovation without empirical data is crazy. We have to be productively paranoid and make sure we are working things through thoroughly. And if we follow a rigorous problem-solving process, we follow a disciplined and empirical approach, we will find an elegant solution. This was Bill's solution to the supplies problem. It was a world first. We might not think much these days of an airdrop because it's so obvious to us. Back then, this was a game changer. This had never been done before. It'd never been tried before. There were no roads. Well, with an airplane, that's not a problem. There were no railways. Well, with an airplane, that's no problem. 900 miles, okay, for an airplane, it's no problem. Suddenly, they were able to flip this problem on its head. Supply of communication was now incredibly fast. Supply of bullets, extra people, bringing the wounded or the sick out, no longer a problem. And we need to be able to move things fast. We need to speed up a number of things that we've been doing quarterly to maybe monthly, monthly to weekly, weekly to daily. I was talking to one client yesterday and we moved the daily huddle to a twice-a-day huddle. The faster we can get supplies and resources and answers to questions in, the better. And lots of us can find solutions that help us pivot in this situation. Let me give you a couple of examples. One of my clients produces these very strong, very sound shelters for aggregates. The material comes from Canada, the steel comes from Australia. Going to have a bit of a problem with supply. Actually got a bit of a problem with capex in a crisis when clients are shutting down. Maybe they don't want to buy. Maybe we're not going to be able to get our materials. What should we do about it? Okay, this stuff is in use in a lot of interesting places, but are we actually solving a problem right now? Our mission, our brand is to protect what matters. Okay, does aggregate matter the most right now? Okay, we've got a supply problem, we've got a cash problem, we've got an installation problem, but what matters most? What could we help protect? Well, there you go. They will need shelters, sadly, for lots of different reasons. Some of them good and some of them not so pleasant. But can we find a shelter that doesn't require a lot of installation? Yes, we can. This actually, if I could be very naughty, is kind of a bouncy castle that gets blown up. It just happens to have walls and doors. It can be put up and taken down and moved very easily and very fast. They have pivoted into a high need area. Now, we have to be careful when we're trying out new things because we could use all our gunpowder, often for us cash and marketing and collateral, all in one go. If one of these big old ships were honing down on us and we had one pile of gunpowder left and we took our best cannonball, used all our gunpowder and fired it off to the ship and missed it by 40 degrees, we're dead because we got no more gunpowder left. We can't fire any more cannonballs. We might be in a situation with cash where we don't have that many chances to get this right if we're going to pivot. So the most important thing to do is fire bullets first. So you use a sharpshooter who uses a small amount of gunpowder and he fires a bullet, he misses. He changes his aim by 20 degrees, he fires another bullet, he misses. He changes his aim by 10 degrees, he fires a bullet, he hits. Now you've hit the ship. Now we fire the cannonball. And that's exactly what this client did with Zaptizer, a mechanism which stays within their brand to protect what matters, pivots into a high area of need. This can keep plants operating, factories open, sites open, or help people reopen after an infection or with the lifting of lockdown later. And this potentially could be the top selling product for this company in this calendar year, outstripping what they were already pretty successful at doing with shelters. What about a Porsche? Nobody wants a Porsche. I mean, we're in the middle of a crisis. Surely all car dealerships have stopped selling cars. Lots of car dealerships have closed. Not Mondial's. You don't have to go to Mondial's to see the car. They've got a virtual showroom, which gets you through a computer system, through a screen, through a web browser, to sit in a car and have a 360-degree look around you and just enjoy the pleasure of how well that wonderful piece of German and Austrian hand-engineered equipment is. They can actually still sell you the car, but you want a test drive, not a problem. We'll sort out an arrangement and you can take the car home for a couple of days. Typical puppy dog sale. Imagine taking your favorite car home for a couple of days and trying it out in your own way, in your own time. Are you really going to let that car go back? So they have pivoted. They have found a way of helping clients do what they want to do during this crisis. And whether you want a Porsche or a Ferrari, they can help you. Some years ago, Sapphire Balustrades had to pivot into an industry that was unknown to them, the balustrade industry. It got them out of a previous recession. They'd pivoted from a more general subcontractor and done pretty well, making specific types of balustrades, particularly with glass. Then came tougher times and tighter margins. They had to stay within brand, they had to stay within their innate capabilities and pivot into an area of high need. They developed the world's first glide-on balcony. They did fire a bullet, miss, fire a bullet, miss, fire a bullet, hit, then a cannonball. Now, Sapphire Balconies is 2 to 3 times their previous size and dominate their market. If you can't make up your mind between two courses of action, Bill would say, take the bolder, find the bolder, find the more elegant solution. If you're got two choices, take the bolder one. Time for a poll again. Of all the leadership solution strategies we've suggested, which one or two, I've asked for two actually on my slide, do you consider the most important? Poll should be live. Which two leadership solution strategies do you consider the most important? %20 voted. 40% voted. 60%. 80%. 90%. Okay, share the results. And there you have it. Fire bullets before cannonballs. Brilliant strategy. Make sure that we save our gunpowder. Alongside that, not far behind, create the solution teams. Have a very narrow focus for a small group of people to work on specific problems and specific opportunities. Clarify leadership roles, coming in a strong third there. Absolutely get people focused on the roles and the goals they need to achieve, and you have a chance to make significant progress. Thank you for your participation in that. So, get my clicker working again. Seems to freeze after a poll. So Bill had 3 problems. We've talked about supply. What about health? Health was a big issue. Malaria was rampant in that place. You couldn't fire a gun if you were sick. One of the reasons for training everybody to fire every gun was that you just didn't know when people were going to become unavailable, and you couldn't do that on the front line. We may have similar issues with people going off sick or being furloughed or just not being able to concentrate while they're remote working. In all of this, he never left anybody behind. He brought everybody back, but he analyzed the root cause of why people were getting sick. Why were people getting malaria? Because they wouldn't take the tablets. There were tablets which would stop you getting malaria, not a problem, but people wouldn't take the tablets. Why wouldn't they take the tablets? Because there was a rumor, unproven, that it would make you infertile. I mean, forgive me, but you're in the jungle surrounded by Japanese with guns and you're worried about your fertility. He did, Bill Slim, up the sales pitch. He tried to scare them into doing it. He did up the communication, and we may well have to do that, remember. Move the speed of communication, be open, be honest, be factual, be focused, but don't do meetings quarterly, maybe not even monthly. You may need weekly all hands, daily all hands, maybe even twice a day huddles. He upped the communication and he upped the persuasive element to try and get people to take the tablets. They still struggled. They still had issues. So he applied the last part of leadership as Bill Slim describes it. It's a combination of persuasion, example, and compulsion. He discovered that some of the senior team weren't taking their tablets, and therefore they found it very difficult to enforce the taking of tablets amongst their men. And where he discovered that, he stripped those officers of their rank. And that was just not something that you did. It was not a good outcome for those top officers. He fired 3 of his most senior officers. And Bill then said, the rest got the idea. Sometimes we have to apply a little persuasion. Absolutely, we have to provide people with a clear, unambiguous example. And sometimes we have to insist. And those 3 things are part of our leadership personality. So, what's your health strategy? Have you upped the communication? Can you get people involved in looking after each other? A team starts together, finishes together, and doesn't leave anybody behind. Can we break people into smaller teams that can care and support for each other so people are not alone, even though they are socially distancing? Can we speed up our communication? Can we make it more factual? Can we make it more focused? Can we make it more frequent? Can we revisit the things that are the health of a typical business? The health of a typical business comes from its behavior standards, its fundamental business principles that we hold dear and treat as sacrosanct. It's those things that are at our core, our brand values, our behavior standards when things go wrong. What are the minimum behavior standards we expect when things go wrong? Is it to blame or is it to support? What are our core values? Are we living by them ourselves as a group of leaders? Because if we have a compelling example, we've got a chance to persuade and influence the people around us without telling everybody what to do. And I find it fascinating that this marketing message has been used so cleverly by those in government, because the NHS is hardwired into the psyche of the British people. You just try and privatize it and everything breaks loose. But stay at home, protect the NHS and save lives. Save lives, okay, comes last, and maybe that's the most important. But if we don't protect the NHS, we won't. But in protecting the NHS as that core message, which is rooted in our hardwired core values as a population, it's got us doing some crazy things on a Thursday night. You know, I'll be outside later with my wooden spoon and my frying pan, giving it large, as do all of our neighbours. And there'll hopefully be an extra clap for Captain Tom or Colonel Tom tonight as well. So emphasising and reinforcing and leveraging core values can get people doing some crazy things. This is one of my customers. He's a building company. He can't work at the moment. He's furloughed the whole organisation, but he's reached out and wanted to take care of everybody. He has sent a box of 6 cupcakes to all of his customers and all of his suppliers and all of his staff. I sent him a card wishing them well and stay safe. Yeah, he is reaching out and nurturing relationships in a way that I'm sure will come back in droves later. Now, for him and for many of us, is actually not the time to sell. It's the time to nurture. It's the time to reach out and show that you care. It's the time even to talk to people where you lost that sale. They went with a competition. Ring them up and show them you care. Lots of people won't. You can. That's his core value. He wants to build trust before he builds anything else. That's his mission statement. A builder that builds trust before they build anything else. And he's staying on message and trying to find a way of doing that with his customers and his suppliers. Bless him. James, you're an amazing guy. This is an organization which is the largest business networking organization in the world. Business people get together over breakfast or over lunch and network with each other. Well, how are you going to do that during lockdown? Within a week, the global team, 10,000 chapters, were doing networking on Zoom. Now, there are 35 members in one particular chapter in Oxford. It's called Oxford Spires. 35 members. In the last 12 months, they've referred over £2 million worth of business between them. Each member has 34 salespeople working for them free. So you better believe that they do want to turn up for the weekly meetings still. But surely you won't get visitors going to a virtual meeting. Surely referrals won't be happening during this time of lockdown. Well, you'd be wrong. Actually, visitor numbers are up and referral numbers are holding. So even in this time, this organization is making a significant positive benefit to a community. Why? Because it's got some very strong core values. It rigorously recruits and nurtures a strong cultural fit. It uses coaching and mentoring and support. They have clear KPIs and they measure them. So whether you do or don't show up, whether you do or don't refer somebody, whether you do or don't support other members and go on training programs, all those numbers are crystal clear. The empirical data is there. They don't blame if you don't hit the numbers. They put an arm around you. They've got a steel hand in a velvet glove. They're quick, they're rigorous, they're crystal clear. The rules are there. It's a relentless march. Success is about doing the right things well enough, often enough. And the system that's been going for years tells them what the right thing is, what they've got to do well enough, and how often they've got to do it. But if somebody's off track, they don't blame. They help. They put them on a development program. They do their absolute best to nurture them and pull them through. These aren't staff members who are beholden to you for a job. They're members who pay you a fee to be part of the club. But your performance management is just as effective in this membership organization, where the customers are performance managed. It's amazing. And there are many organizations that would say we're like BNI, but without the rules. They're not the biggest business networking organization in the world. BNI is. They're the ones with the relentless 20-mile march, that discipline which goes with the creativity and the innovation. So, a question for you. Which values or behavior standards or business models would you not give up, even if you couldn't see the results coming through right now? Use the chat box to give us an answer. Which values or behavior standards or business models would you not give up, even now, even if the results weren't coming through? Networking, honesty, integrity, excellence, learning, nurturing the team through difficult times. Thank you. Smart values, building trust. Best practice, speed of response, build people, quality of service, transparency, and never be an optimist. Yeah, be a productive paranoid. Business basics, principles don't change. Get the message across. Be an opportunist. Thank you. Thank you for all of those ideas. Much appreciated. So, morale, the last of Bill's 3 problems, possibly the last of our big problems. Bill managed to turn the morale around. He managed to turn the war around, and ultimately he pushed the British. He did push the British troops, but the British troops pushed the Japanese not out of India, all the way out of Burma as well. He defeated a much larger, much better equipped, much better financed force. We can defeat this virus together. Bill's view was on leadership that integrity is not so much a quality in itself, but it's like the water within which we swim. And for him, that really told an amazing story, because he found in one clearing a group of soldiers laid out on the floor, dead on their feet. No tents made, no food prepared, no fires lit. He went around the corner to a second clearing and found the officers. They were bivouacked already. The tents were up, the fires were on, they were eating, they'd settled down for the night. And Bill was not a happy man. And he said, guys, you do not eat, you do not sleep, you do not bivouac, you do nothing until all the men have had their food, got their tents up and are resting. And then you can do the same for yourself. But if you put your men first, then they will give you something very precious. And that's called discretionary effort. And for the British Tommy, Bill said there is not an awful lot of difference between the British Tommy, the German soldier, the Italian soldier, or the Japanese soldier. But he will give you 5 more minutes most of the time than those others. And you only get discretionary effort from willing followers. There is only one way to get it. As an authentic leader, we have to earn the rights to get that discretionary effort. And that discretionary effort will give you amazing things. One of my clients has £100, £1 million worth cost per month. They're 30% down year to date. The owners have declared they will take nothing from the business. They're working on saving 20% from the central cost of the business. They've said to all the staff, we do not want to furlough you. Volunteer teams have been appointed and set up, and these guys have a charity team. They have a team to help people save personal finances. They have a team to save money in the business. They've energized and motivated all the staff. Have done an amazing thing because they stepped up to the plate and said, even though it's difficult, We'll take the biggest hit. We want everybody to share the pain, but we are going to get through this. And they have, in my opinion, won the hearts and minds of that team and got the discretionary effort. That extra 5 minutes is so massively important and produces stunning results. Final thought on leadership from Bill. Now is the time to step up. So, in the chat, what are some of the lessons you've been reminded of or heard about today that you are determined to do something with? What are your lessons on leadership? Engaging with clients, reaffirming relationships, honesty, be bold, be clear. Walk the talk. My talk talks and my walk talks, but my walk talks louder than my talk talks. Be a compelling example, laser focus, discipline, fire bullets first. Take the bolder option when you're confronted with two very similar. Reach out to individual team members and individual customers and prospects. Trust the team. Thank you. Thank you so much for your participation and engagement with these things today. So we're going to open up the Q&A, and Jim and Walter will also contribute to those answers. So who has the first question?
Bob, we've had a couple of questions in already. Can you hear me?
Yes, go for it,
yep.
Walter.
Okay. First one is, I'm fairly new to leadership. Where do you think I should start with all of this?
Well, you're kind of thrown in the deep end, which is a tough thing to do. Now, we have learnt from people giving us advice on swimming. For instance, if you get thrown into a cold river or you get thrown out of a boat and you get thrown into a cold sea, the first thing to do is not swim, but actually tread water. So, if you're new to leadership, then you need to take a bit of time to get accustomed to the cold or the heat that you're in. You need to get yourself balanced and steady your heart rate. And that means, spend time networking with the key stakeholders in the business, spend time listening to the staff in the business, get a feel for your team, get a feel for the role, get to understand how people are wired. These days, emotional intelligence is as vital as actual intelligence. So spend a bit of time to build those relationships and build that rapport. I think once you've got that started, your instincts and your empirical evidence will tell you what to do next. Walter, Jim, have you got an alternative?
No, thanks, Bob. Another question in. We get the point about training everybody on all the weapons. Some of my staff really don't want to sell. How do you think I should address that?
It's really tough for someone to do something they're very, very uncomfortable with, that's outside their personality. If we force people to do things that they're exceptionally uncomfortable with, then their motivation will go down, and they will avoid it. They will do everything but, and they'll get demotivated because they know they're letting the side down and they're letting themselves down. So I think if they're very much against it, you can look at training to try and build their confidence and build their skill, if that's at all possible. Or you could find an allied role, something close to it, that they do suit. We all have personalities, we all have temperaments. So maybe doing something like an empathy profile to understand their temperament would tell you what they're better suited to. Maybe it's not selling, but they could be good at talking to people. And maybe what you want is actually someone to ring customers and prospects and say, how are you? Not how much would you buy from us? And it may be that if you tell them they're doing care calls and nurturing calls, that they'd be happy to pick up the phone. Is that a fair answer?
That's very good, Bob. Yes, that's certainly what I would go with. Yes.
And if I could, Walter, just to interject there, Bob was suggesting the understanding, the awareness of the personality, because that's core in terms of driving the behavior of all of us. And I think is it the next session or is it the session after that, Walter, you'll be doing something on that empathy profiling?
Yeah, 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today. Yeah. Here's another question, Bob. From hi, I'm working for a YMCA where our biggest challenge is to support chaotic and vulnerable young people through this crisis. The key for us has been to strengthen communication with residents and staff and ensure that it's regular, focused, and most of all, open and act with integrity. To be open and act with integrity. Does the panel have any thoughts on the explosion of video conferencing, both the positives and the pitfalls?
Yeah, I really spend my life on Zoom these days, which is amazing because Skype used to be a client of mine, and Zoom is my go-to tool, or Teams. I think it's incredibly stressful for a lot of people. Our brain uses the most amount of energy of all the muscles in our body, if our brain was a muscle. But if you look at the amount of calories consumed by the different parts of our body, our brain uses the most. So intense nervous focus energy for 45 minutes is quite draining. So if you're on a half a day or an all day Zoom session, it can be very draining. So I think from a work point of view, it's an issue. It has been advantageous because we've had our first family pub quiz without going to the pub, and we wouldn't have ever thought about doing that on Zoom. So we literally had people in different parts of the country connected and all answering the quiz questions. That's another contact of mine who's spun a business. He runs escape rooms. Escape rooms are dead at the moment, but he's now running pub quizzes for companies and for charities and for families. And you can do it yourself, but it's nice when someone's got all the questions organized. So Zoom can be used in positive ways, but I think it does add a degree of stress to what is already a stressful situation for many. I think being able to reach out and talk to people, so to be able to talk to my eldest cousin who's 80 something in Australia, and FaceTime her or Zoom call with her, that's an amazing relief. So it's one of these two-edged swords. It's taken over some people's lives. It's invaluable, and yet it is draining. And I think we're probably going to be using Zoom or something like it far more often. I think flexible working will become a thing far more than it's ever been. Working from home is going to become a thing. And having written the book on remote working recently with 24 other authors, I mean, that's selling incredibly well. So it's obviously fulfilling a need. All the money's going to charity, by the way. But I think it's an issue we all face. So thank you for that question. It's a real two-edged sword.
Yeah, just to build on what you've said there, Bob, I was listening myself the other day to a tutorial online, and we can send the link if it's useful, that we do need to upskill ourselves if we're not familiar with how to use this particular medium of communication. And if we were face-to-face, we talked about the non-verbal communication and the power of that in particularly stressful situations. And eye contact is key. I see people on Zoom and team conference call meetings over the net, and they're looking everywhere, but into the camera.
Yeah, look at the camera.
Look at the camera. In fact, one little tip that I picked up from the training was that I now have a little sticky note with an arrow pointing to the camera on the screen, so that it forces me to look into that, because eye contact is so critical.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Thank you. Who's got the next question?
There's one more question at the moment, Bob. Is there a best approach for conflict resolution in challenging times?
My go-to model on conflict resolution is called Crucial Conversations. So that is a thing. You can type it into Google. There's books and audio programs and probably by now online Zoom training programs. It's a fantastic model because it doesn't really blame anybody for what's going on. It merely says that if the stakes are high and emotions are involved and you've got a difference of opinion, then you've got a crucial conversation happening. And the really important thing is to think about making the conversation safe. So it doesn't matter whether someone is going verbally silent because they feel the conversation's unsafe, or whether they're becoming verbally violent because the conversation's unsafe. You know, both are an issue because you're not putting your whole self into the conversation. And unless you can put your whole self in, then you're not going to get a great answer out of that conversation. And this can happen at a board level. It can happen with, you know, partners, husband and wife, children. You know, if we don't feel the conversation safe, we either lose our rag or we pull out, and we're going to end up making a naff decision or having a naff conversation and upsetting ourselves and others to boot. So there's quite a useful set of ideas and principles in crucial conversations which help us make conversations much safer and raise our awareness when we're feeling unsafe or when somebody else is feeling unsafe. And there's also this kind of win-win or win-no-lose mindset which says, I'm not going to allow this conversation to go unsafe. I'm going to do my absolute best to keep it safe, because that's the only way I can keep the other person engaged. That's the only way I can get to a genuine resolution to this situation. And I think that approach is needed more now than ever. My good lady was struggling with Skype yesterday, and I think we would have ended up in an unsafe conversation had I not understood a couple of techniques. Thankfully, she's not on the call to realize I'm talking about her, but thankfully she also didn't spot that I was using some of my training to handle the situation. Thankfully, we got her live on Skype. So problem solved. So go look up Crucial Conversations. It's not a Bob model. It's one I would certainly absolutely 100% recommend. Jim, other
thanks,
questions?
Bob.
Sorry, Walter.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, just to reiterate and remind everyone that Richard Locke's session next week, same time next week on presentations online, will cover a lot of these points as well, in terms of how to present and how to communicate well online.
Okay, thank you. So if we begin to wrap up now, because I promised we would exit this session within 60 minutes, and we're getting close to that now. I promised you a free extra. One of the 3 books that's been really successful for us and for the readers, hopefully, in the last period has been Persuade, which achieved a bestseller ranking in a number of countries. So anyone who responds to the survey that you will get at the end of this session can have a free copy of the ebook. If you've already got Persuade, let me know and I will send you a hard copy for free. The other thing that's part of this offer is that at the moment we've kept the price of the 2 new collaborative books incredibly low. So 99p for remote working and £1 for Fit for Purpose Leadership. Now, the article in Fit for Purpose Leadership is about Bill Slim from my contribution. There's 24 other authors in both books, and they'll give you completely different views and angles on it. So we can't hold that price down for too much longer, but even that 99p or that £1 is all profits going to a children's charity trying to help those who are struggling with issues of violence at home. And finally, as part of that huge offer, then you can access a 30-minute free chat consultation, if you want to call it that, with myself or one of the other team, if you prefer. We still use Skype. We do still use the phone. And of course, you're more than welcome to a chat on Zoom. So thank you so much for attending. And I look forward to seeing you in the real world, or maybe on another webinar next Thursday. Goodbye.